Hey, I'm Michael Hoff with Digital Theologian, and welcome to day 26 of 40 Days with Jesus. Today, Jesus gives Judas some bread, he goes outside, and it's night. It may have been yesterday since you read the beginning of John chapter 13, but for the disciples, it's only been a few minutes since Jesus has taken off his outer garment, taken a towel, wrapped it around his waist, filled a basin with water, and taken on the role that even a Jewish slave wouldn't fill by washing his disciples' feet. He has portrayed a level of care and concern for them that goes beyond the norm. Recognizing that one of his disciples, one of those with whom he has spent 3 years, one of those that has chosen to follow him through everything that has gone on, in the midst of the Pharisees and the Jews questioning him, his disciples have stuck with him because they've already acknowledged that in him are found the words of eternal life. One of these individuals, now with Jesus, is going to betray him. We need to keep in mind that Jesus genuinely cares about his disciples. And he said that he had loved them to the end. And now we're reminded that one of them is going to betray him. Seeing how upset Jesus is about this, the disciples begin to talk among themselves, and they want to know who it is that is going to betray Jesus. And so we have our first appearance of the beloved disciple. The disciple that Jesus loved shows up here in 13:23. We're not given a name for the beloved disciple, and there may be a few different reasons for that. But what we have here is this person is leaning against Jesus, closer to Jesus than Peter. And so Peter's like, hey, find out from Jesus who it's going to be. We shouldn't lose sight of the fact that Jesus is dipping bread in something and passing it to Judas in this moment. In giving Judas the bread, Jesus is giving him a sign of favor. As Jesus offers Judas the bread, there's the potential that this is one last appeal, one last opportunity for Judas to turn back to him. Judas takes the bread, but doesn't respond to Jesus. We're told then that Jesus says, "What you do, do quickly." Judas leaves the fellowship, and it was night. And we need to let that scene play out in our minds, right? If we're watching this movie, Jesus is washing the disciples' feet. Judas is there, knowing what he intends, while Jesus washes his feet. There's the meal, there's the discussion about who's going to betray Jesus. And then Jesus says to the beloved disciple and Peter, that the one he passes the bread to, will betray him. Then Jesus turns to Judas and says, "What you do, do quickly." And the disciples misunderstand in the moment. But Jesus knows and Judas knows. So here we see Judas leaving Jesus, leaving the fellowship of the disciples, and then it was night. It should be noted that this is the only time that Satan is mentioned by name in the entire Gospel of John. As we read this, as we become familiar with the narrative, I don't want us to lose sight of the fact that God and Satan are on the stage at this point. It's about the glorification of the Father through Jesus' faithfulness, through what he's done, and it is about the enemy trying to thwart Jesus' glorification. So we see the forces of ultimate light and dark at play here in John chapter 13. It's worth noting that it's only after Judas leaves in verse 31 when Jesus has those disciples that are truly faithful to him that he begins his most intimate teaching, his most intimate discourse that we have in all of the gospel begins in 13:31. After Judas has left, Jesus is now free to address his disciples. These are the ones that are true to him. They're the ones that are sticking with him beyond everything else. The one who would betray him is now gone, and Jesus is addressing his faithful followers. So it's in the midst of that we get this amazing teaching over the next several chapters. And Jesus is addressing the entire group of disciples from here through the end of chapter 17 And really the only time that he talks to one individual is when he talks to Peter in verses 36 through 38. Despite interruptions from other disciples along the way, this entire section is addressed to the followers of Jesus. And we have the appearance of Jesus' beloved disciple here in the midst of it. And we are told now that the faithful disciples are here that God has been glorified in what Jesus has done so far, and that he will be glorified shortly. That Jesus' time is now at hand. The cross is in sight. Jesus knows that his time is short and he is making the most of it. He has glorified the Father through the signs that he's done, through the way that he has taught in public, as he has healed the sick, as he has raised the dead, as he has demonstrated the character of the Father. Jesus has pointed clearly to who the Father is, and he has glorified the Father faithfully. And now we're told that in the Son the Father will be glorified, and that the time has come for Jesus himself to be glorified. And glorification means the cross, resurrection, and ascension. Now that Jesus is with his faithful disciples, he has a new commandment to give them. This is the fresh teaching of Rabbi Jesus. This is the tasty morsel that those who have been hungering for truth have been looking for. And Jesus now gives it to them. Love one another as I have loved you. This isn't an abstract concept. This isn't some vague sentimentality. This is moments after Jesus has washed their disgusting feet and served them in a way that only a slave would serve them. And in the midst of that, Jesus says, love as I have loved. Love requires action. Jesus has already said, it's not about what you know, it's about what you do. It's good to know, but it's blessed to do. And now we have Jesus defining what it looks like for us to be faithful to him. Love for one another is to be the hallmark of Christianity. We have a long way to go. We're falling short of that standard. As we have infighting and denominationalism, as we have people getting into corners and shooting at one another over doctrine. And this is not to say that differences in doctrine don't matter. We need to have the discussion. We need to reason together. We need to debate and think through and wrestle with the truth of the scriptures. But our primary focus should be on loving one another as Jesus has loved us, because it is a testimony to the world how we care for, how we love one another.